Welcome to Travel Market Life, your companion for industry insights and professional business development. Travel Market Life. Join us by webcast, video or podcast.
Hello, welcome to the final live session from IHS 2023, where we look at the tech stack for the future with Vibhu, RBH Hospitality Management, LV Zetter Hotels, Nick Pilbeam, Point A Hotels, Harry Fielder, Umi Digital, and Nadine Böttcher, OTA Insight, where we look at how you can make the most of your technology investment and discover the right systems that are going to work for your hotel and your staffs, breaking down silos.
Travel Market Life.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you again for coming along to the social business space. My name's Ryan Haynes, and I am the host of Travel Market Life, which is an industry podcast where we look at digitalization, innovation, and technology within travel and hospitality. We have one series called Hoteliers Voice, where we speak to senior leaders about some of their technology developments and their strategies. And we also have Hotel Partner, where we look at the utilization of technology within a specific field within a hotel. I've had conversations with pretty much every single one of our panelists today, and you'll be able to find our conversations there. Tend to release a new podcast every single week, so that'll keep you up to date with some of the developments that are happening in the field of technology. During this session, we're going to be looking at tech stack for the future. So how can you make the most of your tech investment? How can you build a business case for senior management? And how can you get staff buy-in so you make the most of those investments? Because as we know, some of the difficulties that we have when we implement new technology is actually staff training and staff utilization. Are they using it the way you wish to? Are they using it the way that the system providers think you're actually going to use it? Because obviously sometimes tech providers live in dream world, and there's not a real reality that we need to go on a journey for how these systems can be effective. So let us get started. The tech stack for the future, or maybe the tech stack for today is more important, and we can do so much future gazing. But Vibhu, CIO of RBH Management Hospitality Management, we've had a number of conversations, and you work and look after a portfolio of different properties, each with their own unique set. And digitalizing the guest journey is one of the areas that you've had a focus on, particularly within limited service hotels. Could you give us an idea within limited service hotels of what your tech stack looks like today?
Yeah, I can. So thanks a lot for that, Ryan. We've spoken a lot about digitization, and especially in the limited service model. The limited service model has literally had tremendous growth since COVID. It's a model that has worked really well. There's continuous demand, and there's always digitization that is going on in the background and for the front end for the users and the guests. The main issues that come around digitization is the uptake from the users and the buy-in from the staff, which has been predominantly the issues. So tech stack right now is looking at a next generation PMS that has complete AI built for distribution. It has APIs that easily integrate with the majority of the systems out there. The tech stack then looks at connectivity, door locking, your kind of solutioning in the hotel as well, so that you have an infrastructure and an ecosystem that delivers from end to end, and it's scalable. Scalable being the most important thing, especially in portfolios where you have to take a model, you have to kind of get it refined, pilot it at a hotel, and then you have the ability to scale it up and go from 20, 30 to 40 hotels in a fairly quick iteration. And that's probably the key focus right now, to have partners who are scalable with their models and to have connectivity that allows us to do that fairly quickly.
I mean, you obviously had chance to be able to explore the market, look at all the different providers that are out there. What is the key pieces of advice that you give to really sort of owning in and trying to find those that actually will deliver for you?
I think probably the most important piece of advice there would be know what you want as a hotel, as a business, because it's so easy to get driven by the product, and before you know it, you're buying a product without knowing what you really want as a business, and that doesn't work, and that's when any kind of system or process falls down, because you have now ended up buying something that looks great, but it's not fit for purpose for what you are as a business. So it's the main kind of learning that we have had as business is to be very real with what do you want as a business, what is it that the gap that you're wanting to fill, or what is the process challenge that you want to get over. And understanding that and knowing that before you go out to the market is probably the biggest piece of advice. The other point is probably just having your stakeholders are crucial, knowing who you're buying for, what system goes where in the business hierarchy, and actually understanding will it deliver to those stakeholders.
It is fascinating because that's obviously where we're coming on to next with you, is around staff and making operations easier. And we sort of looked at this within our previous session, recruit, reward and retain, and that importance of really talking to the staff, involving them on that journey. And as you've sort of looked at reshaping the way you're delivering your experience to your guests, how have you actually incorporated the staff through that and the journey of technology adoption?
Let's start with the negative. The negative always is the turnover of user base. The turnover of user base in hospitality is and will always be a challenge. You know, especially your frontline staffing, that changes relatively frequently. By the time you've already embedded a solution, you've got your user base all up and running on it, if it's a frontline solution, you're kind of realizing that why you don't have good adoption of the system. You look into it and you realize that the user base has completely changed. And all the training that was put in and all the kind of buy-in that was done and all the showbiz that you put around that system going live is all lost because that user base has moved on. So you have to have this program of kind of the continuous adoption cycle where you are training and then retraining, and you're putting in processes that allow the user feedback to come across, and you're allowed to then build the training program in line with what the user base is going to be. And that probably is the biggest challenge when it comes to buy-in, because you might get buy-in at this point in time, and any system, believe me or not, the build can be great, the adoption can be great, but if you don't re-employ that adoption process year on year, you tend to lose that impact.
Now, actually, let's look at the technology suppliers for a second, shall we? What could they be doing better? Go on, Daya.
Quality of resource, the quality of the technical teams that they have. And I get it, they have the same staffing challenge, they have the same issues trying to hold on to their resource that we have. They are not in a different world. The problem is, when you bring in a specialist system provider, and they don't have the right resource that was promised to you, that you scoped around, that you piloted around, you certainly find that the star engineers, the star resource that was available for you during the pilot is suddenly very busy and won't answer your emails. That's when you realize that you've got a problem. So I think the biggest challenge is not the technology as it's developed as a platform, is the ongoing resourcing around supporting it, maintaining it, analyzing it, and evolving it as well. You put in a system that is state-of-art today, that does everything that you want, and within 3-4 months, it's kind of lost its leading edge. And now what do you do? Because you've done your investment, you've done the onboarding, you've done the buy-in part, you are now tied into a system that is outdated very quickly because you're waiting for your supplier base, for your vendors out there to innovate as quickly as the market is.
Thank you very much. Now, we're going to move over to look more at the boutique hotel stack now. And we've got LV, Managing Director at award-winning Zetter Hotels. And you actually did win awards for your technology, did we not?
Yes, we did. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. Round of applause. That's my first part of audience interaction, you see. Yes.
There we go.
To deliver personalized stay experiences, what are the essential components then for a boutique hotel tech stack?
So the way we started at Zetter was turning the whole thing upside down, and you start with what's your goal, what are you trying to achieve, what's your business mix like, what's your team like. So you kind of start with that, answer those questions, and then you start looking for solutions. And the reason why we did it, and I think, again, we won the award, thank you for that. The whole point of that was to find a solution that suits exactly your business mix, and how you operate. We are quite lucky. We've got 3 beautiful boutique hotels. Every hotel, every asset we've got, however small they are unique. Every room is different. Every fit out is different. Literally from one bedroom to another, everything is completely different. So when you got a business like that, your customers expect certain aspects as well. Your customer service, your guest journey, anything from booking engine to how they find you online, to how they make the reservation, to how they interact with you upon arrival, to departure. These digital or personal touch points need to be bespoke, need to be unique. So it's a bit of a challenge for us, or was a bit of a challenge, to find exactly the tech stack that does that. So kind of long story short, what we went with, rather than, again, trying to go, oh, here's a solution, and can we do it with the solution? We went, no, here are the goals, here's the target clientele that we've got, which solution fits best? Not everything fits perfectly well, not every solution is perfect, but you're kind of trying to find unity of those individual moving parts that do exactly that for your business. So yeah, that's how we took it kind of apart and then put it back together, and that's how we delivered the whole product. And the nice thing about winning awards is that you get something to hold in your hand for about 5 seconds. Someone takes a picture of you, but then you get off the stage and you go like, well, actually, whatever we did, this award was a year and a half ago. Things changed. And then the funniest part of that award was we came in the office next morning, all jubilant, all happy, and then our internet went down and nothing worked. And you go like, this is the best stack in London, and we don't have internet, and we can't do a simple check-in. So these things happen, and to be fair, only happened once. But yeah, for us, it's building the unity of individual solutions to deliver individual parts of guest journey and guest experience. That's what worked for us.
I mean, one of the things when I look at different markets, especially from a technology perspective, is how there's so much customization. Yeah. What do you think? I mean, is there a need to go down that customization route, or versus standardized systems within the hospitality industry?
To me, from my point of view, from boutique point of view, customization is key. Again, our business is based on customization, on individual guest experience. So therefore, your solutions, your tech stack need to, again, service those needs. Going back and talking about it as architectural decision, system architectural, is trying to make sure that each and every part can be changed if it needs to be changed. So that goes all the way from what sort of contracts are you signing? Are you signing a contract that's going to cost you arm and a leg in CapEx, and then you tied in for a contract for the next 3-5 years? Or is it actually a solution that requires no CapEx, and actually you can terminate within 2 months because it doesn't work for you? Just because something serviced our needs 3, 4, 5 years ago doesn't mean it's going to continue working the same way in the future. So again, it's that customization, right? So it's from the ground up. Every single aspect, every single module needs to be customizable, and it starts with the architecture. And then, a solution itself almost doesn't matter as much as how it's built and works together.
I mean, 20 years ago, there weren't so many systems. So, you could put on your job adverts as long as you're Oracle trained, and, they come in and they'd be able to use Oracle. Now, there are so many systems are in the market. How much are we building a rod for our own back? Because there are so much out there and we're customizing everything. Is it an issue for you training new staff, and what do you have to think about from that tech stack perspective for staffing?
No. Back in the day, you use that example. I'm not going to name them by name because they don't deserve marketing here. Back in the day, you had one solution that fits everyone. Anyone from housekeeping to front of house to back of house to revenue to finances, right? There was one single solution. And that was a mammoth task. First of all, getting it up and running, because you needed all these parts of your business working in unison just to get it up and running, setup, configuration, and everything else. And that took ages, right? I was involved in the project 3 years ago. It took about 3 months to get it up and running, even though it was technically migration from one version of that system to a newer version of the same system, but it had to be reloaded, reconfigured, reset up. 3 months, right? The whole business. That was just one hotel. When we did it at the Zetter, each individual department does not need to be trained or supported on any other part. So, for example, housekeeping have their own solution, their own app, and that just works, right? Front of house, same thing. You got check-ins, check-outs, taking payments. Simple bits and bobs on finance, that's kind of it. Finance got their own solution. They need to understand how PMS works, check-in, check-outs, but actually everything lands within the finance system. Therefore, they don't need to be trained on everything else. So that whole setup, even though there were many more moving parts along the roads, and it's a challenge in putting that all together in one place, but when you kind of dissect it per department, it's actually much easier. So that's my answer to that.
Wonderful, thank you very much indeed. And I mean, I guess that's the whole point, right? Systems become so much more intuitive nowadays. And you can just pick up an application and pretty much figure out what you need to be able to do with it. And I guess if you're looking to implement these within a hotel, you want to make sure that any staff member is joining, if they've got no experience within hospitality, that again, it's so intuitive, they understand what's going on. No, Nick Pilbeam, Commercial Director at Point A. So how important is it that hospitality takes learnings from other industries? And can we, though, be wrongly distracted by, say, the retail sector?
Thanks for the invitation to be here today. That's a leading question from Ryan. So he knows I'm from the airline industry. And basically, is what do you think of hospitality is kind of the question. So it is interesting, I think. You know, why not look at what other industries do, particularly when they're similar? So airlines, you know, like hotels, if you haven't sold the seat that flew yesterday, you can't sell the room night from last night. So that perishable product approach is very similar. And actually, coming from an airline background and a loyalty background within that context, you know, you realize airlines invented revenue management, they invented global loyalty programs, they invented self-check-in, they invented unbundling on board, speedy boarding, choose your seat, meal, you name it, and are making a lot of money from that. And actually, that is the norm in that industry. So it is interesting to compare and contrast with hospitality. It doesn't mean that, you know, you need to bring everything across, but I think there are some learnings there. And for example, you know, taking inspiration from choosing your own seat. When a guest buys their room type at your property or wherever it might be, you know, you have many of those rooms of that type in your property, and they're actually in very different locations. So your guest experience can vary dramatically in the same room in a different location in your hotel, your boutique hotel, your resort, wherever you may be. So we've just launched a select your own room on the floor plan offering for our guests that book direct, to satisfy that need where the guests choose to do so.
Oh, and who seems to supply that technology for you?
Well, that's also a leading question, because we're working with a fantastic tech partner called Expect Me. Their CEO is sitting 2 seats to the right of me with a blue jacket. And we're very happy so far. It's quite new in the UK. I think it's the first partnership in the UK market. And the most important thing is, I'm sure we'll come on to this is not tech for tech's sake. Our guests love it.
It's fascinating. That's why I love events, you know, because we didn't get this digitally at home 3 years ago. The fact that we can all be in the same room and actually share these experiences, and there are conversations we can pick up and drop off. And say, you know, I had this conversation with Nick back in April, I think it was, where I learned a lot more about Point A and what you were doing with the industry. And then Roland, I only literally met yesterday, having connected on LinkedIn, and then discover that he's working with Nick. So, you know, it's beautiful how the industry here is so well interconnected that we need to take advantage of that. We're not competing against each other. You can't compete against one another, really. And it's an opportunity to really share those experiences. I mean, every single hotelier that I ever speak to is, where do you learn the most from? Other hoteliers. You know, be part of those industry associations and join those discussions and try to make sure that your team go out there and meet people as well, because they're the ones that need to be inspiring the wider team as well to be utilizing and adopting and finding solutions to the problems that they're experiencing. Now, I mean, one of the areas as well that I guess has a bit more of a spotlight in recent months or so is automation. How far do we need to be looking at that from a hospitality perspective?
Again, for me, being relatively new to hospitality, there's plenty of tech out there. I think you've mentioned that, a few people have mentioned that. There's lots of tech to adopt if you choose to. I think the question is, you need to decide what your strategy is for your brand, what your guest journey needs to be, your target market, but also thinking about not just how do we make more money as a brand. I mean, that is tempting to think about that, but what about your team? What about your ESG policy? What are your guests going to think? You know, it's got to be a rounded view, not automation for automation's sake. And I think once you're clear on those objectives and aligned, then you can move through the selection process, you know, very similar to some of the comments that have been made. That's very much our approach too.
Yeah, I know within revenue management as well, you sort of adopt some of the automation aspects. Now, moving over towards Harry Fielder, CEO of Umi Digital. So, I mean, this is a conversation you were particularly keen to get involved with at this event. And hospitality systems have obviously massively evolved beyond the PMS. But how much has the PMS evolved enough to keep up with the basic needs of hotels?
So I think the PMS at this stage, if you compare it to about 10 years ago or so, there's a huge amount that is possible that I think is wildly underutilized from a connectivity. And I don't just mean the PMS piece. I am actually speaking on behalf of booking engines and revenue management systems and all the whole wider tech stack. And I think if you actually unpack the capabilities of all of these tools from maybe from an API perspective, a connectivity perspective, or functionality, there is just not the technical strategic skill set typically in an independent hotel or maybe a small group to actually maximize the value of what hotels already have. And I think the reason we're there is because historically, with connectivity being such a bottleneck in being innovative in the hotel space, there was never a role of a CTO. Obviously we got CIO and everything, and obviously RBH being it's obviously a good-sized group, but for most independents, there is no CTO type role. And so who is meant to be making those strategic decisions based on the capabilities? Oh yeah, the managing director apparently. Yeah. Typically. But in terms of what the API can do across all of our platforms, what data can we receive out of it? Are we going to warehouse that data? Where are we going to? And historically, there just hasn't been that role. And I think that's going to be a shift in the next few years, where to actually maximize the value of the tech stack that we already have in place, there needs to be a significant shift in perspective towards the CTO type role in an independent hotel or a small group. Yes, there's a lot of technology out there that isn't perfect. Yes, I would add a lot more features to lots of things, but I think there is more than is being utilized currently.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, let's just point out a second. You can outsource revenue, you can outsource accounts, and yes, you can outsource technology consultancy as well. There are quite a few technology consultancy companies out there who help you to find that tech stack that's going to work for your hotel. So don't feel you have to go out there and find a CTO, because I think one of the difficulties that we've explored within Travel Market Life podcast is that so many tech people left the hospitality industry to go and look for more exciting sectors where they're actually involved in more dirty work on a day-to-day basis, rather than just making sure the internet was working. So, don't be afraid to look towards consultancies who actually build your architecture for your hotel, because I think today we do need to look outside, because you should be focused on hospitality most of the time, delivering those experiences to your guests. Now, Harry, data. I mean, that was a big thing this morning in our revenue and e-commerce discussion. What are the key considerations that hoteliers need to be thinking when it comes to customer data?
Another punchy one. So if I just sort of bounce off something you just mentioned there, which is we can end up with a huge selection of different pieces of software, and we end up with this kind of SaaS soup with every product being sort of handled in isolation. You mentioned earlier in terms of you have to step back. You have to step back from a systems perspective. But historically, because there hasn't been that technical gatekeeper, and each department has been responsible for choosing their own sort of, marketing's probably chosen the CRM, and you've got revenue probably choosing the RMS, and everything's been made in slight isolation. It means you end up with data silos and a systems makeup that isn't necessarily conducive to a higher purpose, because each piece of software is chosen on merit of what the core functionality is, as opposed to how does it fit into an overarching technical strategy or system strategy. So in terms of moving forward and guidance going forward, I think we need to start looking inward and going, is there a technical gatekeeper who perhaps, I know in this instance is probably you, maybe, but Me, you, yourself, and I. But who is going to be that technical gatekeeper, and what is that technical decision-making framework whenever we are evaluating systems coming on board? Who is going to challenge the underlying capabilities of it, and where does that lead to in the future? So, for example, you might have a CRM that has, we have an API. But all APIs are not created equal. Yes, I might be able to push a contact in. Doesn't mean I can get it back out again. Similarly, I can create a booking, but can I add a payment, or can I add additional notes and additional things to that booking in that PMS? The quality of the data. So there's a huge number of questions that go way beyond a typical sales process. So just because we have an API doesn't mean that is going to be conducive to your overall tech strategy in the future. But there's no way of knowing that in the sales process if a technical gatekeeper isn't part of that process. So I think that it's whether or not that is even a day a month technical CTO type consultant, or it is having someone in your own team that you are kind of elevating to that technical gatekeeper type role. I think we're going to see that hugely going forward. And the way this bounces onto data is, you mentioned just the cleanness of the data, the structured nature of that data. But if you don't adopt this holistic approach to your system strategy, your data is just going to be in silos and it's never going to be put together. I think we're going to see a lot of questions around data warehousing coming up soon, like where is the central source of truth? The PMS companies will say it's the PMS, the CRM companies, maybe they think it's them as well. Is it where is it? And I think that's also a really big question to ask. Do we all need to be investing in our own customer data platform and a data warehousing? Maybe for some businesses, probably massively overkill for others. But there's kind of this fight for central source of truth from a data perspective. So I'd also have a look at kind of where the longevity is. Where do you see this in 5 years' time? Because the decisions you make now around the systems you use and the data you're collecting from those systems will impact you in 5 years if you make the wrong decision.
Thank you very much, Harry. Mind explosion there, isn't it? He's just asked you more questions rather than answering more questions. But we'll unpick all of that during the conversation as we go to breakout just after our last specialist here, because woohoo, we actually have a woman in technology who's joined us. Thank you ever so much, Nadine Böttcher.
You're welcome.
Head of Product Innovation at OTA Insights. What we also have to remember is that we need greater equality in technology industry, but also within the hospitality industry. Did you know that 26% of senior leaders are women? Ugh. No, it's not good enough. It really isn't. And you know how hard it is sometimes to find people in technology as well who are willing to speak. And Nadine's great because she's been doing the talks all across Europe. And I think we definitely need to aspire more women to be taking roles within technology, particularly even within hotels. But also we need to be promoting many more women within hospitality because they quite clearly make great leaders. But that's enough on women and equality, because we're here to talk technology. And one of the points that Harry mentioned was around systems integration. Okay, so this is one of the things that hoteliers keep talking to me about, and when it means identifying hotel partners. How are you seeing the hospitality industry and the tech particularly trying to keep on top of this to provide the real seamless, real-time systems?
Trying is probably the right word to use in this context. I mean, it's the elephant in the room, right? We're here to talk about the tech stack of today, of the future. Really, without APIs or any connectivity, there is no tech stack, right? And it's our responsibility to make that work as tech providers. Yet, what Harry was saying, I think, is very interesting, because indeed, it's almost like a checkbox these days, right? I have an open API. Please do work with me. You can work with anybody else because we have this API. But that is almost the basis of making anything happen. I think there are two interesting spaces which are emerging on top of this basic connectivity. Those are real partnerships between tech providers. So this is really where you would see, let's say, ABI solution, making data available for an RMS to actually provide a 1 + 1 = 3 situation for the client. So you would have two partners partnering up around a feature set or an integrated feature set. Thirdly, you see more all-in-one solutions emerging as well. So those are the ones that, well, they try to eliminate this problem by eliminating the connectivity altogether at the expense of the choice of the customer. And I think that's something we all are very keen to keep, well, for you guys, that you can assemble what you need. Where we can all do a better job, I think, is really what you've been saying as well, Harry, well, you can obviously have a consultant who can help you assemble this tech stack, but really, I think where we as tech providers can step up is to provide this proper consultancy, because we think in silos as well. We know we have an open API. We want to be the only system that you're using because you like to live in dreamland, as you already stated. But really, it often doesn't go further than that. So if you come to us and you want to purchase our systems, we're not really in a position to recommend who we really connect well with. And well meaning data flows both ways. It solves actual problems for your business. We only know we connect, and whoever you want to then select, that's up to you. And I think if every partner could step up just a little bit, we could clear the fog to a certain extent for the clients as well.
I mean, it's a fascinating time for the technology, because that's what happened about 15 years ago. Huge amount of consolidation, a lot of mergers, a lot of acquisitions. So we're going to see a complete change in the landscape again over the next few years. About 5-7 years ago, so much innovation, so many new startups came up and were solving so many problems. But what we need is more integration with the existing systems. Some hotels are going, I want safety and security. I want to go with one provider, as you were mentioned. Others want that complete bespoke customization and being able to sort of really dip in, dip out into different applications. Really need to be thinking about what's going to work for you, what's going to work with the way that your business works. But technology suppliers, they need to constantly innovate and meet the needs of the industry as well as capabilities for users. When you're looking at your innovation and developing a product, how do you manage that balancing act?
It's a really interesting topic, and I could probably fill the entire hour just talking about this, because I think it's really this balancing act that if you nail it, that will differentiate a good company from a great one in the coming years. And you'll see this in the way the companies are innovating. We just heard it, I think, in the first comment, how upset a hotel can be if there is no ongoing innovation on behalf of a partner, on behalf of a hotel who's just purchased the specific system. That makes my heart bleed. Obviously, my current role, I'm very much responsible for this. And usually this balancing act, you have to think of it as 3 different buckets. So quite correctly, there is today, there is tomorrow, and then there's the day after tomorrow. And as a tech provider, you need to invest in all 3 of them in order to meet the needs of the client today, but not to head towards your Nokia moment in the future, because you need to keep your business going. And what's interesting is that usually the stable companies, they still invest most in today, so to keep the clients going, because it's the feedback and the problems that they have today that, if they are solved properly, that will qualify us to even be around tomorrow. So a lot of investment always needs to go into what matters today, what matters now, what's possible right now. However, if you ignore tomorrow and the day after, this is setting you up for failure. And it depends on the company and what stage you're in. Usually you'll see a distribution like 70% of your efforts towards today, 20 to tomorrow, and 10 towards what's really ahead. And this can be really new technologies. Like now we see ChatGPT emerging out of nowhere. The tech companies that are looking at that, that's the 10% of the day after tomorrow. And that's how you have to keep on going. And what's important is to make time at all times in your roadmap for these initiatives that sometimes never pay off, because sometimes they do, and that's what gives you the edge then down the road. So really important to be disciplined, allocate time in all 3 buckets, no matter how you decide to do that.
Thank you very much. And you know, one of the things that you can look at when it comes to identifying suppliers is looking at their roadmap. Ask them what their product roadmap looked like, what is planning to come in their updates over the coming months. Any company that isn't providing updates and doesn't have a view as to how they're looking at evolving the product isn't investing in the product. If they're not investing in the product, they're not investing in the industry. If they're not investing in the industry, they're not investing in you. And, I think one of the things that and is always shocking is just, for example, property management systems, how many property management systems there are out there. One tech provider, it already connects to over 180. And I imagine as a technology company trying to work with 180 providers and partners, it's also a struggle on the other side. So definitely look at sort of those systems that are actually providing and actually investing in their technology. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'd like to invite anybody on the outskirts to please come on in and join the conversation because it's time for our experts to actually have conversations with each of you. We're going to go and visit the tables, just hear from you, some of the thoughts and ideas that you've got. You can just listen if you want to. They perhaps talk to you about some of the things that they've been doing. And then we're going to come back here in about 15 minutes' time and then just hear about what, in general, all of you have on the forefront of your minds. Okay, so let's get social businessing, shall we?
Travel Market Life.
Travel Market Life is backed by Haynes Marcoms, a B2B marketing communications PR consultancy specialising in the technologies, travel, hospitality and property sectors. Create meaningful connections and visibility to grow. Haynes Marcoms cuts through the noise to resonate with target buyers, decision makers and influencers. From contextualising your mission to positioning your value proposition, Haynes Marcoms helps you address the issues that matter. Marketing, PR and social. Build profile, gain momentum, shape strategy with Haynes Marcoms.
Travel Market Life.
Okay. Well, those 20 minutes kind of disappeared pretty quickly. The beauty thing is that we can continue these conversations after this session at 4 o'clock. But I just want to sort of go round and just hear from everybody. And you, Nick, you're more than welcome to stay where you were or come back wherever you feel comfortable because I can move. That's the beauty of technology and wireless today. So starting off with Nadine. So Nadine,
Yes.
You had quite a number of people, a nice little group around you just there. What were some of the things and key areas and topics, questions that you were exploring?
So I think one topic we're just exploring right now is the trade-off between this big question, shall I actually have several tech providers or shall I try to go all in one? And as of which size of hotel is that beneficial versus not beneficial? What are the ups and downs? So I think that's an interesting question for everyone. Another very interesting topic, but the gentleman already left, is what part of your tech stack is often not in place, or let's say where's the biggest opportunity that everybody seems to miss? And we were discussing a bit how hotels, they tend to staff or they tend to curate their tech around the guest journey within the hotel, but the moment they leave to go home or to go out into the city, basically they're not their guests anymore, they do their own thing. So I think there are a lot of interesting technologies emerging around the stay of the guests and staying in touch with them even when they're not in the property. So I think those were some interesting topics over here.
Excellent. I say you really had quite a group here around here, and all of you were very thoroughly engaged in that conversation. Over to Nick in the corner there. So what was your key highlights?
So we had a great discussion. I think the summary is that we think there's an opportunity for hospitality to put guests more at the center of the thinking around tech stacks, because the travelers have changed, right? After COVID-19, the behavior is different, the needs and wants are different. Particularly the attention span is really very, very small. So I think we should challenge ourselves. To what extent are we wanting to know what their pain points are? What do they want from our brand, our tech stack? And then lining up to that might be a bit of a gap/opportunity.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Over to Harry then, and your conversation there on your round table.
Cool. So I was chatting to Danelle and Ben from EcoBell, which is sort of an app that sort of in-stay app that enhances the guest experience through. And one of the key topics was distributing other revenue streams, right? So being able to have other, book local tables. engage in the wider community around that, wherever they're staying, maybe service departments or hotels or whatever. So we were really discussing sort of distribution and aggregation of inventory, whether that's in on the hotel side, which is your kind of hyperguests and Chanex and all these guys that are ultimately aggregating huge swathes of different data sources into one sort of bookable API. You're also starting to see it in the flight space with like Duffel, who are aggregating 300 airlines into one bookable API. Not quite so much aggregation, I think, in the F&B side of things, but yeah, we were just talking about how the infrastructure behind creating a marketplace, which is a really interesting one. And then just as we got on to, just as we closed out, see, there's a lot of learning from within the application itself in terms of guest preferences, what they want to order, where they want to eat, what do they need during their stay. And we discussed making it a very clean process of pushing that data out to, you know, whatever destination they want, whether that's putting that into a CRM, putting that alongside a customer profile in the PMS, to making sure that any learnings that are made within that app, which historically is probably a bit of a data silo, within the insights within that app are pushed out to other data sources, even though we don't necessarily know what those data sources are at this stage, just making sure that there's infrastructure in place to push that out.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's interesting, you know, because we need to focus much more on first-party data, how you're gathering data and owning that data yourself, and then how you're storing that data and making it accessible to different departments so that it can be utilized to provide better guest experiences. Again, with our Hoteliers voice, I've spoken to a number of hotels of how they're really using data intelligently to provide augmented services, particularly for high-end luxury. It's amazing from a staff perspective, if they can see all the insights about a guest, how much more of an experience that you can deliver in and around it. You know what sort of spa treatments they like. You know what time they go for a cocktail at the bar. You know what sort of excursions they go on. You know what you can recommend and heighten that stay. Over to LV on his table in the center here.
So I don't know if we had any particular conclusion. I think kind of to add it up for me, what we spoke on earlier, there's no such thing as a good solution or a bad solution. There's only a solution that either fits your business really well or maybe it does not fit your business. But it doesn't mean it's a bad solution. It just potentially means it's not for you. I think that's a very clear solution that we probably kind of discussed here. Not everything works for everything or everyone.
No, and sometimes it's best to try and test. And you know, the quickest route to failure is trying something half the time. And if you haven't tried it, then how will you ever know? And, you know, I think that's one thing that we're always a little bit too scared sometimes because we feel it's going to look bad on us. But I think we need to be more open in our environments to say, well, you know, we got to try something. And doing nothing at all will not actually help us move forward. Vibhu, what was on this table here?
So I think we have lost one person because they probably got bored. So we had another person on the table. It wasn't just four of us. Yeah, possibly. So we started off with the conversation about the kind of the luxury end of the sector and the single profile of the guest. You know, when you have a situation where you have siloed systems, where you have systems where the spa, F&B, you've got the PMS, you've got about 73 other systems that are coming together to run that environment. That single profile of the guest is probably the most elusive thing in the business. You know, you end up with a situation where what is the true value of that guest to the business? Every function thinks differently. What is the true experience of that guest? What is the repeat potential of the guest? How do you actually anticipate that guest requirement, that guest need? 7 different systems in the hotel and nobody knows what that is. You know, that's the reality of the business. It's to the point you just made. No system is bad in its own, but they cannot work together. And the APIs, the integration, we have spent the amount of money, time, and resource trying to come up with things that will kind of work, but it doesn't work. And then where do you go with that information? And that's what is lacking right now. And that's the conclusion we drew is you can know your segmentation and you can do the best with that segmentation. What is that segmentation? What is the spend? What is the overlay of that segmentation? But when you kind of delve down to that single high-value guest and what they are bringing to your business, it's still a struggle. And we didn't really conclude anything. because it's not something that is ever going to be concluded. The point that you made about having that ability of having a single solution that does the entire ecosystem, and then you live with the half-baked, some subset of it works really well, but there are other elements that don't. So we just went into that detail of what does that future look like.
I wish we had more time. So, to Vibhu, to LV, to Nadine, Harry and Nick, thank you ever so much for joining us today. This has been Travel Market Life takeover of the social business space. Thank you.
For more, go to Travel Market Life. The music sensation by Zach Nelson is reproduced under license from Storyblocks. Travel Market Life is a Haynes Marcoms digital marketing agency production, serving the travel and technology industries.